Marty, I've been thinking about my prediction for this Big Ten Eastern Division the entire offseason, as I typically do, about all the conferences and which way is this going to go. I certainly don't want to be inside the box. I want to think, okay, what are the possibilities? Because we've seen TCU break through, we've seen Cincinnati break through, we've seen Michigan break through when they weren't supposed to. Penn State's nowhere close to the level that those schools were when they made the leap. They are, pardon the pun, that they are right there. Of course, Penn State has been one of the better teams in the country most of the second half of James Franklin. I get on here all the time, Marty, and people forget James Franklin's won 3 New Year's Six games, and those teams have gone 11-2, and it just seems to bypass people. They just think that he's just underachieved. But looking at this particular Penn State team, I got to say, my thought has been, well, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, I'll consider them, but I'm not going to give them the kind of consideration. But looking at Penn State's defense on all 3 levels, there are services and publications out there. And when I look at the personnel myself, they consider all 3 of these units, and this is rare. You got to go some places like Georgia to find this, that all 3 units are arguably in that top 3 to 5 range in the country.
Yeah, it's definitely a rarity. I think this team, I've said it all off season. In my opinion, this is their best team since at least 2017. For those who don't remember, that was a team with Trace McSorley at quarterback, Saquon Barkley at running back, Mike Gesicki at tight end, and wide receivers of Deshaun Hamilton, Juwan Johnson, Chris Godwin. That team was just loaded everywhere on offense. But I think this team has a much better defense than that group did. This defense, I think, has not gotten the recognition it deserves all offseason. I think you can argue that there is not just a first-round pick, but legitimate, bona fide, all-American, maybe number 1 player at their position off the board in the draft at each level of this defense, with Chop Robinson at defensive end, Abdul Carter at linebacker, and Kalen King at cornerback. I think this defense can be very special. And, you talk about the Big Ten East and James Franklin and being overlooked. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. If what James Franklin has done at Penn State, the teams he's assembled, that sort of thing, if they were in any division other than the Big Ten East and the SEC West, James Franklin's looked at completely differently, because there's no way that they still don't have a playoff berth yet. I think in 2016, in my opinion, they should have been in anyway. But, he's done a phenomenal job. And I think a lot of people also don't truly appreciate Penn State, and there's a lot of Penn State fans, for what the ceiling of the program really is. And I think James has had this program at the ceiling. I think there's no program in the country who's going to benefit more from a 12-team playoff than Penn State. And that said, though, last year, the 4-team, I'm not going to be surprised at all if they get in. They're a really good football team. And again, I think if they were in any other division except for this one or the SEC West, you would be a team that a lot of people would be penciling into the playoff right now with this roster. You mentioned all 3 phases. Maybe the biggest concern on this team is just going to be finding consistent punting after losing Barney Moore, who did a tremendous job last year. And when your biggest question mark is finding a consistent punter, maybe a consistent place kicker, you're in pretty good shape. Your roster is in really good shape. So, yeah, this is the best Penn State team, in my opinion, since at least 2017, maybe since 1994, which, around here, comparing any team to that 94 team is like hollow territory in Happy Valley. So yeah, I think this is a really good team. And what's just sucks, if you're a Penn State fan, they could be legitimately one of the 5 best teams in the country and still go 10-2, because this division has 2 of the other possible 5 best teams in the country.
And so, Marty, looking at the offense, because in analyzing the 3 teams that we expect to vie for this playoff spot out of the Big Ten, and maybe it's going to be 2 of the 3, we look to the offense, and of course, Drew Aller's a bit of a question mark, but to me, he's not much of a question mark. I would be surprised if he doesn't have a really good season. I don't want to call it an elite season, a great season, a Heisman season, a prolific season, but a really good season. Now, that may not be enough. He may need to be just that good. I I don't doubt that the numbers are going to be there, but similar to Kyle McCord at Ohio State, what's he going to do if they're down 4 with 4 minutes left in Columbus, or that sort of situation? Like you say, well, you mentioned the recruiting, offensive line recruiting's been uh, great for this offseason, but also I believe you've told me that the offensive line itself should be the best that it's been under James Franklin.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, this line's got talent, and most importantly, it's got a lot of depth. Again, to draw comparisons, that 2017 team, one thing that really hurt them was that was not a good offensive line, and they suffered some injuries in their game against Ohio State and Columbus. That without those injuries, they probably win that game and go to the playoff that year. I mean, obviously, everybody knows Olu Fashanu. Nobody expected him to come back. He probably would have been a top 10 pick last year. You're looking at the guy who may be the first offensive tackle off the board in April, just as elite as it can get. But it's more than just that. Your starting right tackle, Caden Wallace, is a fourth-year starter. Your third offensive tackle, Drew Shelton, started 7 games, including the Rose Bowl, as a true freshman last year and doesn't have a starting job. And it's because of nothing he's done wrong. It's just guys have gotten healthy and have come back. The interior of this offensive line is extremely deep. The best way I can put it is it doesn't look like projected starting left guard Landon Tengwall is going to be able to go Saturday night against West Virginia, and you're not even worried about it. In past years of the Franklin era, you lose one offensive lineman and you're in a panic because there wasn't much depth behind it. And instead, you can sub in with JB Nelson, who started, I think, 4 or 5 games last year. Like, there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of talent. And you know how it is, Mark. If you have a good offensive line, that can make a lot of things easy on offense and make a lot of good players look great and great players look beyond great. And the hope is that's definitely going to be something Penn State will have in their favor this year.
So most people know about the 2 backs. You could write a soliloquy and go on about the seasons that they had and great, but let's just consider them a given and get to the receivers and the tight end, because that's another place where I look at the personnel. Some nice players there, but obviously they lose considerable players, Parker Washington, etc. And so how confident are you in that they're going to be as explosive and consistent as they need to be at wide receiver and tight end?
Tight end, definitely not concerned at all. Yeah, you lost Brenton Strange, who was a second-round pick by the Jaguars, but you bring back Theo Johnson, who was probably your best all-around tight end anyway, but battled some injuries last year, which really allowed Brenton to kind of, take that starting job and surge. Tyler Warren is back, who played a ton last year. Khalil Dinkins is a guy who has just stole the offseason at tight end. You go to receiver then, and Keandre Lambert-Smith is a guy they've just been waiting on, and put up back-to-back 100-yard games last year against Michigan State and Utah to finish the year. By all accounts, this offseason really kind of seized that alpha male wide receiver 1 role in the receiver room. So I think they're very confident in him emerging as that true guy. Trey Wallace, another receiver they're high on. Liam Clifford, Sean's little brother, has had a great fall camp in the slot. I think they're going to be okay. They brought in Dante Cephas, who was an all-MAC receiver last year at Kent State, put up some big numbers, including against Oklahoma and Georgia. So it was encouraging to see he's done it against Power 5 defenses. And to me, it's kind of twofold with the receivers. One, as I said, you have a great tight end room. I think you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel and not your traditional 12, because you have a guy like Theo Johnson, a tight end, who is similar to Mike Gesicki, that 6'6" build and a super freak athlete, but is a lot more physical than Gesicki, so you can block with him more. But I think you're going to see a lot of Johnson flexed out wide and only have to have 2 receivers on the field. And part of that also is when you have a quarterback like Drew, you expect him to elevate your receiver room. You expect him to throw guys open, things of that nature. So, yeah, there's some question mark at receiver, but I think between what is a known given there and Keandre Lambert-Smith, and to a lesser extent Dante Cephas, combined with the other talent there and how high you are in this tight end room, I think they're going to be more than okay with who Drew Allar is going to be able to throw the ball to.
We get Marty Lieb here from Penn State Rivals platform. Marty, what are you working on right now, and what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, getting into the season, obviously we'll have a lot of our seasons, just content, interviews with the staff from the rival sites of Penn State opponents, position grades, game recaps, all that stuff. One thing that I have always done at Black Shoe Diaries and bringing over with me to rivals every Tuesday, we will have what is going to be called Friday Night Lions, where you can come check out stats from Penn State commits the previous week on the high school gridiron, huddle film, stuff like that. I know that's something fans are always interested in. See how the commits are doing, not just stat wise, but their huddle footage, things like that. So make sure to check that out if you're interested. Easiest way to reach me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days, at MSJ41817, and I'll be there for the ride of wherever Penn State football goes this year, because it should definitely be a fun and memorable season in Happy Valley.
Marty, before we let you go, in your prep for West Virginia coming up, and for you old timers like me, you know that this was once that independent versus independent Eastern Bloc rivalry that was played every year. So it brings back some memories. Any issues, any threats, concerns that West Virginia could make this a little bit uncomfortable? The only thing I can think of is that they do have three like top end Big 12 pushing All-America status type of offensive lineman, and CJ Donaldson at running back. If they try to bleed the clock and beat up Penn State up front, that maybe they, take the air out of the ball and reduce the clock and stay in the game, in an ugly game for a while.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing with me. If you look at it, what you think West Virginia could do to keep it close. And it's a first start for Drew Allar. You don't know what kind of jitters are going to come with that, especially primetime game, 107,000 packed in that place. They're doing a stripe out, not a white out. So what it is they make the blue stripe like on the helmet. So 99% of the stadium will be whited out. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. I think if I had to make a guess, I think I could see it going similar to the Auburn game last year, where that's what Auburn did early on. They had a solid to decent offensive line, ran the ball, bled the clock, tried to keep Penn State off the field. And that game, I think, was like 16-13 at halftime or whatever. And then Penn State just blew their doors off in the second half, and the talent gap emerged. I won't be surprised if we see something similar to that happen. I also think Neil Brown, you can never underestimate a coach who knows they're coaching for their job with their back against the wall, which Neil Brown definitely is this year. And I think Neil Brown's a fine football coach too. So I won't be surprised to see WVU hang around for a half or so and make it uncomfortable. But I think in the end, Penn State probably wins this thing by at least 17-20. I just think the talent gap there is too wide. And you throw in what this atmosphere is going to be like at Beaver Stadium on Saturday night. I mean, a lot of fans are excited for this year. Like you said, Mark, this is an old rivalry that has not been played in 30 years. Last time they played, I'm too young to remember it. So like my generation, it's fun to have those regional rivals, especially with college football moving away from that so much. So I think that'll have the crowd pepped up too. But yeah, like I said, I could see it being similar to the Auburn game last year. West Virginia running the ball, bleed the clock, keep it close, but in the end, Penn State pulls away and wins it comfortably.